So this is the drawable system. So this in the drawable header, I have the private callback draw as well as the draw to the callback, and I have the scene registration and scene the registration also to be private, and they're used by the command. And in the protected side, I have the user submit registration and the registration for the command pattern. So scrolling back, the draw will use the registration stage, which guarantees that prevents the duplication of the submissions. And it's pretty efficient since the registration state is declared in another file, so I can actually use it for all the examples, like the updatable. And I'm actually using the command pattern to do all the registration and the registration. Then in the structure of the drawable, I'll just delete the registration and the registration command. And if we look into the drawable manager, there's not much going on. So I have the process elements to be private, so the user cannot call it. And it's only accessible through the drawable manager attorney to the scene. And then I'm using a list of drawable pointers. The reason why I'm using the list is because it's pretty simple to set up the constant runtime using the reference on the list for each of the drawable. So the register and the register take the storage list reference to constant deletion. So the register sets the reference, and then in the register it'll just erase the reference, which is pretty fast and efficient. And then for the process elements function, I'll draw the 3D objects first, and then all the draw 2D objects. And that's pretty much all for the drawable. This is how the drawable looks like in the Vultr engine documentation. So I have the 4 highlighted functions: the callback for the draw and the draw 2D, as well as the user submit draw registration and the submit draw the registration. I have a detailed description of what the functions are, and I have an each individual description as well as some snip codes on how to use each of the functions. So the updatable is pretty similar to the drawable. So I have the private update function as well as the internal registration functions for the commands. And the protected side, I have the user submit update registration as well as the submit update the registration functions. And I'm using the registration state, so that guarantees that prevent the duplicates of the commands. And as you can see, I'm using the command pattern. So the submit update the registration, or either the registration, it'll just submit the correct command to the scene, and then in the structure I'm deleting both the command of the registration and the registration. And in the updatable manager, I have the process elements private, and I only have the register and the register public. And I'm using a list of updatable pointers, so that will give me the ability to use an iterator. So I can iterate, I can register and register at a constant time using the iterator reference of the updatable. So during the register, I'll just update the reference of the updatable, and on the register, I'll just erase the updatable given the reference, so everything happens at a constant time. Then it'll just process all the elements in storage, which are storage in the list. And this is what the documentation looks like. So I have highlighted the update function as well as the submit update registration and the registration function, since these are the only ones which are user available, and for the update, this is just the callback, and I have some snip codes for each of the function as well as a more detailed description of each function. And this is pretty much how the updatable diagram looks like. So let's start here at the bottom. So I have a frigate that actually inherits from the game object, and the game object inherits from the updatable and the drawable. And I have all the steps layout, so it's easy to follow them. So then each of the drawable or the updatable each has their own registration commands for either registration or the registration. Then they'll be sent through the scene attorney to the scene, and then the actual scene will just add the commands to the registration broker, and then the registration broker will execute the commands, which is basically just a callback through the respective attorney, which are these registration private functions that we have here. And then the private functions, the scene registration and the registration, will actually talk back to the scene attorney for the actual registration in the scene. So during the actual registration in the scene, each of the updatable and drawable will be parsed to the correct manager. Then the manager will process all the register drawables and updatables in the scene and then it will just do a callback through the attorney once again. And then the attorneys will actually reach the callback in the frigate, either the draw or the update. That's pretty much how the system works.